that racial segregation meant that black people would be separate from white people. And it struck me right then that that's never been the case. It's never been the case that black people were separate from white people, because I couldn't get it in my mind. What do you mean by separate? Black people work right, they work right on the plantation. They work in the plantation house in what we call formal slavery. Black ladies were seduced by white men, had babies by them. So what do you mean by separate? But then there was another term used, equal. Now, that's the key term. But I didn't like the term of the use segregation, because the segregation had to mean, in my own mind, not only apart from, which wasn't really the truth. You're not apart from somebody that you can reach out and touch. But it means subject to the power of. And that's the only way it ever should have been used. But I think that the way the term segregation was used was very confusing. And then I began to discover that a lot of other terms were confusing. Because even when they talked about racial integration, what constitutes integration? Does it mean that a black person stands next to a white person, say, 5 feet away? When do you know that you're integrated with a white person? When you're 5 feet away, 3 feet away, 27 miles away?
There are many people
How do you quantify it?
Yeah, well, there are many people who believe that we're integrated with these people when we're close enough to them that they have their hand firmly in our pocketbook.
Well, and looking at it that way, under the compensatory code, that would come under economics, the handling of money and all like that. So then it raises the questions about, even if a white person has their hand in my pocketbook, it is their pocketbook anyway, because they are the ones who produced the money that went into my pocketbook, and they are the source of the money that goes into my pocketbook. It's not like money comes from some other source and comes to me, and then they take it after I get it. They are the ones who originated me getting the money in the first place, because when I am subject to them, everything that I have is subject to them. And I think that's not been made very clear either. Mm-hmm. The book itself, the textbook for victims of racism, is broken down into 9 areas of activity. It's divided, rather. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Now, whoever thought up the idea of white supremacy knew that in order to control people, you have to get control not just of some things that they do. You get control of everything. But they also knew that if you get control of one of those areas of activity, you'll have control of the rest. Say the 7th area of activity. If you get control of people's minds in the area of religion, then you have them. If you get control of people's bodies in the area of sex, then you have them. If you get control of the commodities that people use, or the way that people use their time and energy, that would come into economics, because that's how I define economics in the code book. Economics is not just money, it's the use of time and energy. So if you get control of the way that people use their time and energy, you have control of those people. And all of the other areas will come under you. Education, the way they entertain themselves, their sexual interactions with each other. You'll have control of all of that. All you need to do is get control of one area of a people's activities, get control of the way that they entertain themselves, and you'll little by little gain control, or maybe very swiftly gain control of all of the other areas. Why? Logically speaking, because all areas of activity are interrelated. Mm-hmm. Everything that a person does in one area of activity is interrelated to the things that they do in another area. They're not separate.
Earlier, you were talking about this concept of the victims of white supremacy as agents of white supremacy? At what point is that agent expected, or should that agent be expected to realize that they have become agents of a system that doesn't serve their own self people? And at what point should we, as people who would resist our group constantly losing against their group, at what point should we expect to put together our own sort of compensatory system to deal with these victims as agents?
We're doing it right now in this interchange on in this correspondence electronically right now. That's the process. See, we're not outside of the process. You're born into the system of racism. I like to put it in this perspective so that everybody can understand it real easy. It's like being born in a prison. When you're born in the prison, you're just born in the prison, and you are serving the purpose of being a prison, serving the purpose of the prison by being a prisoner. The only way you can get out of that is to eliminate the prison as a prison. And particularly when you have been convicted unjustly. You're born in the prison. The people who are on the planet right now who are classified as non-white are born subject to the system of white supremacy. They're born in it. They didn't have any choice in that. So the minute you become aware of that, you're supposed to be working on the enterprise of getting out of this system. But there's no such thing as just stepping out of it. You have to actually eliminate the prison itself. And there is a process for doing that. And since you're in the system, you just erode it from within the system. And you do that by eroding, first of all, by eroding the use of the way the language is used by the white supremacists themselves. You change the language, because that's how they put the prison together, with language. Language backed up by force, by violence, at strategic points. But the day-to-day operations of the system of white supremacy is all in the language, because language affects the way that people think. And the way people think will determine the way that they will speak and the way that they will act. So when you start changing the language, changing the meaning of words and the way words are used, and I pointed out just a couple, initially a few minutes ago, you say that white supremacy is racism, and racism is white supremacy, and there is no other form, and you stick with it. Now, they will shout you down and say it's not so, but it is so. And it's not trickery on your part. You're undoing the trickery that they have been using, because they are the ones who said that people are members of races. The people themselves never said that. I never found out that I was a member of a race until I was told. Told by whom? The usual suspects. The white supremacists themselves. They're the ones who told me I was a member of a black race. I'm a black person, but that doesn't mean that I'm a member of a race. Because when you're a member of a race, you're practicing racism, and I've never practiced racism. I'm a victim of racism. So the whole essence of the system of white supremacy, the glue that holds all those bricks together, is the way language is used every day. And if you use the way that language, the way that the racist has the victims using the language, that is the cement that holds the whole system together. If you do anything to destabilize the use of language, you're destabilizing the entire structure. And that's how those prison walls come crumbling down, because they can't hold it together when the language is being used differently.
Well, as a radio talk show host, I am in complete accord with you that we have, because of this illogical, emotional-based condition that's been placed on us as that psychological enslavement, those chains around our brain, we have become so very imprecise with our language. Quite often, in listening to black people talk underneath this system known as white supremacy, racism, when we listen to black people